Hi, everybody. I appreciate you joining me, and I hope you're doing well. Well, it's Wednesday, January 21st, and I've finished up a few things, so I just wanted to bring you a little bit of a reading update. So, the first book I finished is called Personality by Daniel Nettle. Now, this is just a very lay accessible popular science book that hopes to introduce the five factor model with a little bit of a biological underpinning. Now, let me try to unpack that a little bit for you. The author first provides a little bit of a history of personality psychology, kind of culminating in the development of the five factor model. And the five factor model is a system where people through a questionnaire are scored by these five traits. And understand these traits are continua. They're not like a binary, you have this or you don't. And the five factors are extroversion, neuroticism, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness to experience. And the interesting thing about these factors is that you can take how somebody scores in these things and somewhat predict how they will behave, how they'll respond to certain situations throughout their life. Now, by that, I don't mean you can take every individual choice and predict what they're going to do. We're talking statistically here over time. You will see certain patterns emerge. Usually, this is psychology. We're not talking physics type of correlations or results here. But after introducing the concept of this five factor model, he gives a little introduction to evolution. We get to hear about Darwin and the finches, of course, and he mostly wants to talk about the variation in these continua of these factors and give some kind of justification for why there is still variation, because you would think after a certain amount of time, evolution would have kind of locked most people into a certain optimal level of extroversion or neuroticism or whatever. But his argument is that there's kind of a fluctuating selection going on where different levels of these traits are optimal at different times and places, and works for me. I'll go along with that. Therefore, the diversity, the variation has been preserved. Okay, fair enough. Then he kind of breaks down the five factors, and he argues that one of the reasons they have some validity is that it appears there are certain neural anatomical structures or functions that underlie these factors. He sold me on that on some of them, not necessarily all of them, but I'll try to give you a quick rundown. Extroversion, basically people with extroversion, they experience a lot of positive emotions. They get kind of an extra jolly from pursuit, from capturing something. So they're more likely to run after fame, money, sex, whatever, because they get that extra jolt if they're high in extroversion. There's more of a reward there. And the underlying mechanism seems to involve a lot of the midbrain reward structures, the dopaminergic neurons. And with a lot of fMRI data, he kind of sold me on that one, certainly. Neuroticism, I don't want to say it's the opposite exactly, but person high in neuroticism tends to experience a lot of strong negative emotions. at its most extreme, that can manifest as depression and anxiety. But neurotic people can be very vigilant, certainly. And this seems to involve, in terms of anatomy and physiology, the limbic system, the amygdala, the serotonergic neurons is the big one. You get to conscientiousness. Really what it comes down to, interesting enough, is impulse inhibition, meaning that you're able to stay focused on the prize. You're not going to run off and do something that feels good in the short term. You're able to remain disciplined and remain true to a long-term goal. That's kind of the heart of conscientiousness. And people that are high in it show a lot of planning and self-control, certainly. And response inhibition seems to involve the prefrontal cortex quite a lot, the dorsolateral region particularly. Agreeableness, this is where I got a little bit more squishy on the fMRI evidence and the anatomical structures. But agreeableness, what seems to underlie it is what they call the theory of mind, meaning the ability to conceptualize that other people have minds and to empathize with them. And people that are high in it are able to have harmonious relationships, but the downside of that is they can kind of be doormats at times too. And then openness to experience. This is kind of the fuzziest category. It's, how to explain it? I guess you could say people who have high openness to experience tend to have a larger breadth of mental associations than the average. Like if you're thinking of one concept, your brain will tend to associate it with a wider range of other concepts than most people will. And people that are high in openness tend to have a lot of artistic ability, think outside the box, so to speak. But in its most extreme, they can also be prone to psychotic-like behavior. So, yeah, it's just a little bit of a quick and dirty on the 5 factors. The author also goes into a little bit of speculation about the adaptational pressures that might have given rise to the variation in these factors, what might have made them, or what might have made high levels versus low levels advantageous at different times in different environments. This kind of story, just so stories they're often called, yeah, a lot of times they're intuitive, they seem plausible enough, but I don't know what more to do with them. I mean, okay. When I'm thinking about evolution, I'm kind of like, give me some fossils or some biochemical sequences I can look at. Yeah. These, the sociobiology, the evolution, the, what's the phrase I'm looking for? The more behavioral stuff. Yeah, there are a lot of stories spun, but like I said, I don't really know what to do with them. But anyway, it's an interesting enough book. I certainly recommend it to any lay reader who's interested in this sort of thing. It's kind of middle of the road for me, as a lot of these popular science books are, but I can't seem to stop reading them, so there's that. But anyway, second book I finished this is actually a comic book, first omnibus of it anyway, is American Vampire by Scott Snyder, Stephen King, and Rafael Albuquerque. And this was recommended by my buddy Scott. I'll link his information below. Check him out, please. But American Vampire. Basically, the plot line is that this outlaw during the period of Western expansion, the 1880s, is captured by some local politicians and businessmen and Pinkerton agents who are kind of working together. And through a series of strange events, when his buddies try to break him free, this guy ends up getting turned into a new, faster, stronger breed of so-called American vampire. Faster and stronger than the old world vampires, who are very arrogant, very proud of their breeding, their traditions. A lot of them are wrapped up in a lot of banking and finance and land speculation as part of the westward expansion. They really don't like these upstart American vampires. They think they're uncouth and low. So yeah, there's probably something metaphorical going on here. But anyway, this thing kind of skips forward in time, and we have this constant struggle going on between these old world vampires and this new faction of American vampires in different settings, like early Hollywood and during the building of the Hoover Dam and the conversion of Las Vegas into Sin City, so to speak. A lot of kind of iconic American settings and almost a parody idea of American exceptionalism. And just lots of bloody action. Like I say, warring factions of vampires. You even get some vengeful human vampire hunters involved in the mix. Yeah, it's just not the deepest thing in the world, but it's just a blast to read. If it sounds like your kind of thing, I highly would recommend it. And that'll take me to the last thing I finished reading. This is XLZABK001 by Jon Zaremba. He is a writer and a retired musician who is active here on YouTube. I will link his information below. Check him out too, please. If I'm not mistaken, that unwieldy title can also be pronounced Exeliza, Book 1. I don't know, John, if you're listening, correct me on that if I'm wrong. But how to begin with this? It is a series of short stories, and you're going to find a little bit of a lot of things here. You'll find classic sword and sorcery type stuff about a guy who is avenging his family and recovering his property, but instead of riding off into the sunset, he goes on a crusade of destruction that culminates in sort of an apotheosis or consummation of glorified death. And I think his motivation is he's just kind of disgusted by what this entity that is the manifestation of piety is doing to the people of this valley. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting symbolism going on in these stories. But yeah, on the surface, just very action-packed, classic sword and sorcery story there. You'll also get There's a little bit of sword and sorcery in this one, but it's also kind of an eschatological story where the world ends not in flood or fire, but in what I can only call a strange event where almost all living organisms end up becoming incorporated into this singular, all-consuming, all-assimilating, amorphous entity that I guess wants to annihilate all individualism or something. And there are two characters who are standing for individuality and standing against this, and you get the sense that there's kind of a cyclical thing going on here, and this older character has been through this many times, and there's sort of a passing of the torch that goes on. But yeah, great story. If you like zombies, you'll like this one. Another one, you'll get a story about a teenage demon who goes on a sort of rampage of metamorphosis and murder after things get really weird with his mother. And then there's one about an older gentleman who goes on a mission of vigilantism because he's sort of gone into a state of melancholia since his wife died, and he's kind of watched the world he knew crumble around him, and he sees this kind of final glorious mission as a way to find some pride and meaning again, maybe even make his wife, as he remembers her, proud of him before he kicks off. So, yeah, it's one where I guess you could call it a psychological cosmogony, maybe. Yeah, there's this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it disembodied mind exactly, but ends up manifesting its own universe. So then you get these small little things that are just kind of very stream of consciousness, philosophical reflections. It's a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of a lot of things in this book. I might even do another video that just focuses on this book when I've had some time to really chew over it a little bit, because there's quite a lot here, really. But it's probably not for everybody. It's very violent. Not a lot of, well, there's some sexuality. Some of the sexuality involves violence, so if that disturbs you, it is there, but there's not a whole lot of sexuality in the grand scheme of the book. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm still kind of reflecting on it, figuring out what a lot of it's all about. But yeah, if any of that sounds like it'd be of interest to you, check out Jon's page, and he's got another book of stories coming out on February 11th, I believe. So that's good news. I'll definitely be checking them out. And that's the end of what I've read. I will be starting on the Histories by Herododus for first quarter of Historathon. And I won't be starting it right away, but I believe the Xenophon's Anabasis will be my other first quarter of Historathon read. As for what else I'll be reading in the immediate future, I know I'm going to be reading something about cosmology with Brandy over at the Bookclectic in February, but I'll probably be filling it in with fiction of some type. I don't plan these things out very well, but that's about all I have for you. I hope you got something out of this, but till I speak with you again. Well, I'll tell you what first. If you want to tell me about what you've been reading, I always enjoy hearing about what other people are up to. So yeah, leave me some messages. I always enjoy those. But yeah, until I speak with you again, take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.
But am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?